ladies. How's it going? Welcome to session 3, the keynote. We are here with Tysen Duva, Assistant Attorney General. How's it going, Tysen?
Going well, sir. How are you?
Very good. We've had a phenomenal day so far. We've had two great sessions. One was about behavioral science, how compliance teams can drive better behavior adherence to the principles in the organization. And the last one was about AI. And so we have been eagerly waiting for you to join. Thank you so much for joining us on Ethicsverse Day.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I think you were going to kind of share a little bit of DOJ perspective, and then we'll kind of have a little bit of a conversation before we pivot to the rest of the panel.
Sure. That sounds great. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tysen Duva. I am the Assistant Attorney General, head of the Criminal Division here at DOJ. And I can't see you, but I'm sure you can see it. Hopefully you can hear me. My journey here to the Criminal Division was over 2 decades of being a prosecutor at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Middle District of Florida. So I've been a prosecutor for a long time. I've been in a lot of courtrooms, tried a lot of cases, and done a lot of fraud and sort of corporate compliance cases. So about a year ago, if you told me I was going to be here, I wouldn't have believed that. But went through a process and was fortunate enough to get this opportunity to be here in the Criminal Division. So I learned a long time ago that the basis of every crime basically is somebody getting paid. Somebody's either making a material misrepresentation or involved in large loads of narcotics or laundering money. And the root of all evil in the criminal world, of course, is money. Just about the mission of the department, and then I'll get into sort of the 3 topics that I'm going to talk about. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche talked last week during his confirmation hearing about restoring American trust. And how do we do that? When I took over this position in late December of last year, so I've been in a little more than 6 months. On some days, it feels like I've been here about 5 years. And on some days, it feels like I've been here about 10 days. So it just sort of depends on the day. But my test is really sort of the common sense test, and it is, what do ordinary Americans care about? How are we going to focus criminal division resources to vindicate the interests of our free society and what ordinary Americans care about? I hired an individual who's our international deputy assistant attorney general over our international portfolios. We had lunch the other day, and he calls this the Aunt Donna test. And I said, well, who is Aunt Donna? And he said, she is a blue collar worker, aunt of mine that lives outside of Phoenix. And so everything I do, even on the international stage, is with the paradigm or perspective of would Aunt Donna care about this? So today I want to talk about 3 things. I think the middle one, which is going to be corporate enforcement, is going to be most interesting to you. But the first is something that's a big priority to the Justice Department, to the Criminal Division, and that is prosecuting cartels and their financiers. On Monday, I had the interesting experience of attending the plea hearing in the Eastern District of New York of Ismael Zambada Garcia, also known as El Mayo. And for those of you who may not know who he is, he was the co-founder of the Sinaloa cartel with Joaquin Guzman Lorea, also known as El Chapo. So El Chapo was tried in that courthouse about 10 years ago, convicted, and is in a federal prison in multiple life sentences. El Mayo, the co-founder, took over the Sinaloa cartel. He was a co-founder, as I said, but really took over control and had control for many years. And he did unspeakable atrocities throughout the world and the United States and the narco-terrorist world. He pumped cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, all kinds of drugs. He laundered money. This was an international conspiracy, and the Criminal Division was involved in prosecuting that cases. As I said at the press conference, I can't take any credit for that. I didn't do anything. I was just in the seat at the time that the press event happened. And the credit goes to the prosecutors and agents who investigated that case over 2 decades. So that remains at the apex of Criminal Division priorities. A quick example that I think is maybe more apt to you is a prosecution that we did earlier this year of an individual named Yan Lin, who was involved in a Chinese money laundering conspiracy and specifically bulk cash pickups throughout the United States, purchasing electronics overseas, involved in trade-based money laundering with all kinds of fictitious corporations in the United States and abroad. There was an element of that in many other cases of moving those funds into cryptocurrency before the trade-based money laundering occurred, specifically stablecoin, which is a type of cryptocurrency that settles in minutes and retains its value. So why do I bring that up to this group? I bring it up because in your industry, in the compliance industry, in the banking industry, you have to use the banking system. You have to, if you're going to engage in this conduct, you have to launder money. You have to create false and fictitious corporations, and you do it typically in degrees of separation of sort of a real corporation within the banking system. So it really takes people like you to see it, spot it, and figure out exactly what's going on. We as prosecutors and agents in a very real way rely on that. You are the first line of defense. In the corporate enforcement world, that's a significant priority for us as well. We are enforcing the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. There was a memo last year, June of 2025, that defined how Foreign Corrupt Practices Act enforcement was going to go under this administration. And there's really 4 criteria. One is what I mentioned before with respect to cartel and money laundering activity by transnational criminal organizations. Another main criteria is what are U.S. business interests abroad, because these are foreign corrupt practices that are prosecuted. Are U.S. companies, because of the bribery, because of the nefarious activity, being squeezed out of certain markets or business opportunities? So we are evaluating those cases. And in fact, I'll talk about a case that we brought last Friday against a company that was moving agricultural products through Mexico. Number 3 criteria is really national security interests. And by that, I mean, what are the national security interests of the United States in a prosecution of this potential conduct throughout the world? And 4 is any other major conduct that might not fall within those first 3 criteria. So our Foreign Corrupt Practices Act group has definitely decreased in size, but not bigger. And it is something that I'm going to staff up further, and we are going to follow the dictates of this memo from June of 2025 and prosecute cases. So the case that I started to mention, that's the Scholar Company. That's an agricultural business out of Omaha, Nebraska, that for 6 years was paying customs officials in Mexico, paying bribes so that their shipments were not inspected and they didn't incur the significant costs of inspection as their goods were shipped down south into Mexico. And over that period of time, paid about $400,000 in bribes. Scholar entered a 3-year deferred prosecution agreement, agreed to pay over $10 million, and committed to implementing compliance programs in their company. So that was not a self-disclosure. That was a deferred prosecution agreement for conduct that occurred over many years. There's another case in the health and safety that you probably know much more about, and that's the Purdue Pharma case, Purdue being the makers of OxyContin. Purdue was ordered to pay more than $5 billion in fines and forfeiture for their marketing of opioids to hundreds of prescribers throughout the United States who prescribed OxyContin, knowing that they were writing scripts or prescriptions with no legitimate medical purpose. And there was an element of that case where Purdue Pharma was misleading DEA in their the reporting requirements that they have there to allow Purdue Pharma to manufacture more OxyContin than it needed to. That was a hotly litigated case. It went on for a very long time, and it ended with a substantial fine and forfeiture against Purdue Pharma. So what we're trying to do with the corporate enforcement policy, which I authored along with my predecessors, Matt Gagliotti and Keith Edelman from earlier before December of 2025, they really get the credit. They started it. We finished it here in the criminal division front office. And what is it designed to do? there's really four mechanisms for it. There's the self-reporting of conduct, meaning that DOJ does not know about it before there is any reporting, that there is full cooperation by the company, and we'll talk about that a little bit more granularly in a minute, and that there is full remediation, meaning efforts by the company to remediate the conduct, remove individuals who participated in it, sponsored it, knew about it, and participated in the conduct, and that there was no aggravating circumstances. So there's actually a flow chart that's out there. It is attached to the policy. You can find it, and it makes it very easy to follow. And so our goal is to have companies come in early so that they can get what it wants, which is a declination. Just a few months ago, this happened. The first resolution after the promulgation of the policy was against a medical device company named BALT, B-A-L-T. A U.S. subsidiary was paying bribes through a consultant to a doctor in a French public hospital to buy medical or to sell and buy medical devices. BALT found the conduct, disclosed it, cooperated, cleaned house, and the Department of Justice via the criminal division declined to prosecute the company. But we indicted the two most culpable individuals. So this is an enforcement policy that is not going to get individuals out of prosecution, but it is a mechanism if corporate America follows it and satisfies those four criteria, that it gets the declination that it wants. So what separates BALT from the Scholar case that I mentioned, and it is that timely disclosure. It is voluntarily coming in and saying, we did this, we found this, and together we're going to form sort of not an odd partnership, but one you might think that is a little bit odd before the promulgation of the policy, to work together to rectify this. So what we're asking is for early disclosure. And so what does that mean? Like, do you do the 100-page treatise with the 50 or 60 footnotes and find everything that there is to know about the conduct? Or do you make the phone call when you first hear something? Well, It's sort of somewhere in between, really. And what we're asking is, do not do the full investigation, wait several months, and cost yourself certain things, because those certain things can be a cooperator comes forward to the Department of Justice, a whistleblower comes forward, somebody goes to the media. I learned long ago as a public corruption prosecutor, and I had a mentor of mine say this early on in my career, you're going to find your best cases in the newspaper. And that absolutely happened in the public corruption cases that I did in Northeast Florida and throughout Florida. You don't want that to happen to you. What you want as a group of compliance officers is to work with your beefed up compliance department to meet the needs of your company. When you find something, evaluate it and come forward appropriately and early with a developed record. It doesn't have to be completely developed, and say, we have a problem, Department of Justice. This is what it is. We are committed with you to getting to the bottom of it. There may be some skepticism of that, and that's totally fine. But we really hope to earn trust over the coming months and years by doing exactly what we did in the BALT case. Now, that wasn't the end-all be-all case. It wasn't huge dollars, but it's an example of exactly how this works, and it's a data point of how the declination occurred, when it occurred, and when the company came in, what happened. Indict individuals, that's really the goal, to hold individual wrongdoers accountable, because a couple of bad apples shouldn't mean the company is engaged in protracted investigation, litigation, and a resolution that takes years and millions of dollars of attorney's fees. That's not the goal. The goal is to form this partnership and work together in the right way early on. Now, this is going to sound a little funny because I'm doing this virtually, but when you do that and you come into DOJ, the best thing to do is to come in person, have the meeting. Once the disclosure is made, set up the parameters of the first meeting, get to know the corporate enforcement prosecutors in our criminal division fraud section, sit with them, learn from each other, and learn the do-outs so that the next meeting there is progress that is made. And I think along this path being in person, trust develops, and that's critical. I want to talk about priority number 3 before I close. Priority number 3 for the criminal division is protecting Americans from cyber-enabled crimes and schemes. What we're doing there is leveraging the talent that we have in the criminal division through our fraud section and our market government consumer group, our CSIP section through which is computer crimes and intellectual property section, our child exploitation and obscenity section, or CIOS, and also our international portfolios, where the Office of International Affairs and our law enforcement and prosecutorial training groups, we have relationships throughout the world in Southeast Asia, West Africa, all throughout the Western Hemisphere, to target these cyber-enabled scams that happen in these locations. So what does that mean? What that means is we partner with the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI to figure out where these scam centers exist. We've already had significant success together with the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia, specifically Janine Pirro, the United States Attorney. We have done press events to announce cases. We have engaged in takedowns in Indonesia, also in the United Arab Emirates and other places where these scam centers are scamming our family members. It's no secret the baby boomers are living longer. Even if you're in your 50s like me, we have elderly parents, many of us. And so we're in that group of life where we're parenting our children, and we're also protecting our parents from sophisticated online scams. And this is a critical feature of what we're going to do here in the Department of Justice, because our older citizens here in America are hit the hardest. There was an FBI estimate last year that tallied that more than $16 billion were stolen in a single year by cyber-enabled scams just like this. We have frozen more than $700 million in cryptocurrency in these investigations. We have seized a Telegram channel that was used to execute the schemes. We have arrested individuals with provisional arrest warrants in foreign countries, in places where we do not have extradition treaties. We have trained law enforcement in those countries to arrest individuals, and they have done that. So we are taking this very, very seriously. This is going to be a feature of the criminal division under my guidance. So modern fraud is very complex. It is global, it is borderless in the corporate world and also the individual world. And it is very sophisticated. So it takes, in the corporate enforcement world and compliance world, it takes individuals like you to be on the spot, evaluate, and when you see something, it sounds a little funny, but when you see something, say something. I often say this, that in all of our jobs as line prosecutors, as agents, as compliance officers, we really all have the same goal, and it's to prevent the crime, and if we can't prevent it, detect it. And how do we do that? We really do that with great communication. We do it with pristine writing. We do it with precision. There's a famous author, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and I love one of his quotes. He said, "Easy reading is damn hard writing." So as a compliance officer in the work that you're doing, the more precise, the more enterprising you are, and the better your written product, the more likely that you're going to attract the attention of a law enforcement officer as a prosecutor. And ultimately, when you're not working as a team day to day, it really takes all of us to do it. And that precision helps connect the dots. It makes the reader want to act. We really all have a shared job. That's to protect our country. That's to protect our citizens. And it's to take these priorities forward and do the best that we can for the United States. Those are the prepared comments I have. And I know that we're rolling into, I think, a question and answer session.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for that. Let's get a nice round of applause for that. That was great. You know, when that flow chart came out, we did a whole episode kind of talking about it, and it seemed, from my perspective, that you all are really trying to bring this sort of spirit of partnership forward. And, kind of what you said in your closing, we're all on kind of the same side. We're all kind of fighting for more integrity, across our country and the economy and things like that. And, I think that the corporate enforcement policy that you guys recently put out, you kind of referred to it as kind of taking some of the guesswork out of self-disclosure. And this is a big topic that, we've had multiple episodes talking about self-disclosure, and, you kind of touched on it in your prepared comments, how fast is fast and things like that. For a compliance officer who's listening for this, and again, I appreciate you making the time to come on Ethicsverse Day to, hear it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. What does acting in good faith actually look like in practice? And where do you see, if, just kind of anecdotally, where do you see some companies get it wrong? And I'm kind of referring to this tension that sometimes a compliance officer might feel within their organization when they're maybe debating with legal on hey, we found something, we don't know kind of the full shape of this thing. If it takes us 180 days to do a full investigation, that probably feels outside of moving quickly. What kind of what advice or perspective can you share around this kind of ever elusive, ongoing question that we've had in our industry?
Yes, that's a great question. And it really is tough. I don't envy the position you're in because things develop differently in every situation. Obviously, we're not expecting perfection on day one. That's an impossible standard. And we want you in the flow chart to be in the green. That's why we're doing this. We don't want to create impossibilities or roadblocks such that you can't be there. So I think good faith looks like we found something and we internally investigated it an appropriate amount of time. We've preserved company emails, we've preserved company devices. We have done the things, we have put litigation holds, we have run our search terms, and we have preserved these things such that if we feel like we ultimately disclose, we have those things at the ready for the Department of Justice to pour through with our guidance. And document productions aren't necessarily, they're part of the deal, but you can give us 1 million documents and say here, and it's not the best faith, I would say, and I did this as a prosecutor with defendants. I always wanted people to know the score. I would make the discovery production and say, okay, if this is a 9-defendant Ponzi scheme case or whatever it is, these are the things that really cook your client. Here are the documents, here are the arguments, and I would take time to send emails and say, here are the hot things with these Bates numbers. And it wasn't fulsome. It wasn't like an exhibit list. That's impossible to do. But it spurred that good faith between me and the defense lawyer. And then the client would be able to see, okay, this is what the government has, and this is how they're going to prove the case. Well, I think that works here too.
Yeah.
It's preservation and setting forth in the first series of meetings, this is what we have and this is how we found it, and build your timelines. The timelines tell everything. If there's an issue, I found this suspicious, the brokerage payment, it looks like a bribe, and I found it on July 23rd. And then I brought it to my supervisor on this day. And then we froze this series of emails on this day. We investigated, interviewed, rose this in the level in the company on this day. And then we did a beginnings of a report where we felt like, okay, now 30 days in, 45 days, whatever it is, we felt like we have a fulsome enough picture to make a disclosure. Then we made the call. This is who we talked to. This is when the first meeting was set. And really, the devil in the details of the timeline and the actions that are taken in an expedient manner, it really becomes impossible for us to say, oh, you didn't do this in good faith. You weren't trying as hard as you should have. It's when it's opaque and somebody saw something and then 180 days go by and then a whistleblower calls and then there's an article. That's when you get in the trick bag. That's when you're moving out of the green into the yellow on the flow chart. And that's what we want to avoid.
There was just a comment in the chat about like this concept of good faith. And it feels like you are really prioritizing that. And that's kind of there's kind of this tension between kind of full transparency or full good faith and sort of self-preservation that a lot of organizations end up kind of debating through. In your experience, if somebody is putting forward a genuine good faith effort, is that like that difficult to see? Like, can't you always kind of tell if like there's a good faith effort being put forth from another party?
Yes, I think you can. I think it's those things that I mentioned that it becomes apparent, and I think that's the goal of the company of rooting out the bad to make it apparent that we are here in good faith and we do want to cooperate. I would say too, with the couple minutes I have left, form a relationship with your corporate enforcement attorney in the criminal division. Make the calls, talk to them, and when you do it, again, I invite you to make the timeline. If we talked to this attorney on this day, and we set up this meeting, and we did this, and these are the topics we discussed. We want you to be successful. We want people to want to come forward. We want people to have a good experience so that they do root out the problems in their companies, allow us to prosecute individuals, and that you stay in the green here on the chart that and spread the word. I mean, if it's a good experience, we want banking industry folks talking. We want compliance folks talking to say, this is a trustworthy process. We had this experience. You too can do it.
Phenomenal. Do you have 45 more minutes? Just kidding. Thank you so much for your time.
I wish.
This was
more fun than some of the stuff I do.
All right. Well, appreciate you coming in, guys. Let's give one more round of applause for Tysen. Thank you so much. It was great to hear these statements from you. Appreciate you joining us on Ethicsverse Day. Thanks for all the work that you and your team are doing.
Thank you for your program. I appreciate being included.
All right. Have a great day. See ya.
Bye-bye. Bye.